Alright, I hope you have had a wonderful day, evening or night. So, in this video, hopefully it'll be a short one, I'll show you how I created these artisan mugs and the spoon and stuff and texture it up and stuff like this. I'll also provide the textures below um, in the comments or in the description. I'll leave a link to the textures on the Google Drive if you want to download those, feel free. Um, I'll rebuild this, so I'll use the textures and the thing. It may not look 100% identical because I can't replicate everything all the same time again and again, or we may do some changes to it. But let's get started. So we're gonna hit File, New, General, don't save, boom. So we've got a new scene. The only reason I did that is because I wanted to show you what the end product would look like at the start, so you know what we're in for. Um, Sometimes I'll waffle on, so it takes a long time to get to the end result. So I thought it's easier to show you first, and we'll go into it. Anyway, delete this. We're gonna get a mesh, and we're gonna grab a cylinder. So this is gonna be our base mug, and what we're gonna do is just drag this up like so. It is actually a really simple model. It's not too difficult. So we're gonna do is just go to here, edit mode. We want to go to faces and delete that top face. Boom. Now we don't have enough geometry to shape the mug. So what we're going to do is just add some loop cuts. Boom, boom, boom. So we've now got 3 inserted. So it's now split into 4 nicely. And what we can do is just scale. So if I hit S, you can see I can scale this up and down. I just want to shape this. Now you can shape this however you like. Maybe you don't want it to have a any taper to it. Maybe you just want it like a normal mug, just completely cylinder. So you can change the shape. Like I said, you can shape it how you want. You don't need to follow along. I'm just going to shape it nice and round, like so, and pull this in. There we go. If I right click, I can shade that auto smooth. Now you notice there's no thickness to this, so we're going to add some thickness. So there's a few ways you can do this. All I'm going to do is choose to model this. You could of course use a modifier. For example, if I was to add modifier, generate solidify, you can say, okay, I'm going to add the thickness, and if you're happy with that, that's totally up to you. And then maybe you'd want to add also a bevel to this, and then kind of try to smoothen it out a little, so you don't have that hard edge. But you don't have that much control. If we was to model this and then apply our modifiers to it, we'll get a nicer looking model. So I'm just gonna select this edge loop here. I'm gonna hit E and then scale inwards, right? And then what I'm gonna do is go to the side view here. I'm gonna turn on my X-ray, and then I'm gonna hit extrude down. So E to extrude down. And when I get to this each edge loop, I'm just gonna hit E again. So I'll scale this to the kind of right width I want, the thickness. Then I'm gonna hit E, extrude down. Now the next line, kind of scale it. Then E, drag it down. And I'm happy. I mean, you can scale that out slightly if you want. And then E, bring this down and scale back in. Something like this. And now if we take a look, if we turn the X-ray off, you can see we've modeled the inside now of our mug. But we want to fill in that hole, so we're just going to hit. I'm going to just scale that in a little bit more, and I'm just going to hit F, and now we filled that hole in. And we have a mug. So if we go to X-ray, you can see we've kind of done our own. We've modeled our solidify rather than it being that solidify. We've modeled this. Now the reason is I can now go here, and I can choose. I can choose how much bevel I want on this. So if I add a modifier and say generate subdivision, now let's turn the cage on, and we go to edit mode. Now we can add additional loop cuts, and we can you know, control this bevel much more better. So you see if I add one here, add a cut in here, and you can kind of shape it to the look you want, right? So down here, you can see it's not looking like I want. So I can bring this bottom in, and then this bottom face, if I select this bottom face, if I do it inset, there we go, ES, there we go. So we've got a much nicer base. And then if I was to grid fill this, for example, and bring that down, maybe something like that, as long as it's trying to match that topology. I think that looks right. Let me rotate this. Maybe 8. Let's go 8. Yeah, I mean, you can see the difference on that compared to that. And we'll just do the same on here again. Like I said, you don't actually need to do that because you're going to fill it in with the drink, but maybe you don't want to fill it one of them in with a drink. So I'm just going to insert. You don't have to do this additional. You could just, if you wanted, I could say, oh, okay, I'm just going to do the grid fill, boom, you know. But you can see that awkward. So that's why I insert a little bit. And then I'll just hit grid fill. And let's look at it from above. I want to kind of align that grid. So I'm going to rotate this. It's not perfect, but I'm trying to work with it. There we go. Anyway, there you go. So now I can, like I said, I can fix this and taper it and, you know, bevel the edges, move these edge loops. So if I want to bring this edge loop down, you can see I can scale it in, out, and, you know, get that look I want. So I don't want that hard edge there. I can kind of pull this down, away and out. It's starting to go. And scale this out a bit. Even I can right click, bevel edge, add additional loop cuts. Boom, boom. And then spread this out. And scale it up perhaps. Like I said. And push it up. Boom. And I've got nice soft round edge. So like I said, it's up to you. There's no rules to this. And now because we have more detail on the bottom as well, I can go here and, you know, select this edge loop or this inner loop here. Maybe I'll do another offset here. And just scale this in a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude along. Just pull that out. So now I've got this kind of little base. So, you know, you can go in there, add so much detail into that. Rather than just doing, you know, getting the mesh, like I showed you earlier, cylinder. If I was to, you know, I'll just do this quickly. Boom, boom, boom. But there's nothing wrong. You can do that. Like I said, there's a million ways to model things, right? And there's so many techniques. I guess it's whatever you need to do to achieve the look you want, right? Also, time comes down to it as well. Boom. And then you could add a modifier. So if I go here, subdivision, increase the count, change that thickness. you go, and shade that smooth. They're very close, but you see I have more control over the model here than this, because these are modifiers. So all I can do with the modifiers, maybe try to change the thickness, um, and then adjust the bevel. It's different. It's just a different workflow. But yeah, but you can do the same thing if you want. I do prefer this way. Anyway, let's add the handle. So the handle itself, we're just going to the handle here. We're going to just add a mesh. Now, in the model I showed you, I modeled that. So there's different ways of creating handles. This time I'll probably create the handle using a curve. So Bezier, I'm just going to use a Bezier, delete the vertices. Alright, and I'm just going to use this draw, and I'll just draw a kind of C shape. Boom. Got a nice C. We can of course tweak this and move these points around. But if we go here, we can see what mesh we're looking at. So we go geometry, and we're going to look for depth, and we're going to increase that. And you've got a handle that you can adjust, and you can tweak the profile of this. So it doesn't, if you don't want it rounded, you can adjust this by changing the profile. For example, if you wanted, a funny shape, I don't know what kind of shape this is, but you see I can kind of make all kinds of shapes by changing the profile. You can also use presets. There are some built-in presets. So if you want some support loops, or if you want this molding, entirely up to you, and then you just increase that resolution to see that molding a bit better. You have to increase the resolution there, and then that'll start to come through. For now, I'm just going to keep it rounded. But yeah, you can overcomplicate things if you want. You can add that detail. Like I said, there's no law. There's no rules. There's no law to what we create, what we do, right? So I can kind of move these points in. And shape this handle to my liking. Like I said, create your handle how you want to do it. The previous model I showed you, or the previous scene I showed you, I had created the handle differently. So I kind of, if I was to duplicate this, for example, I'll just show you how I did it. I selected two faces from the side, so I kind of went face. So get it from here. So I said, okay, I'm going to take these two faces and these two faces, for example, and I extrude along the normal, boom, right, and I delete those faces. Then I select these edge loops, and I right click, and I say bevel bridge. And it looks completely wrong. You have to go here to the bevel, bridge edge loops, not bevel, bridge edge loops. And then what you want to do is change this to a surface, right? Increase the number of cuts, and you have a handle, right? So that's just another, like I said, there's so many ways of doing this. So you can have this as one solid piece of geometry, or you can have two separate pieces, and then you can, change it. So I'm just showing you different ways of doing it. Like I said, there's probably another way of doing it, a million ways of doing it. And then if you want to go in here, you can kind of move these points around and shape your cut, to your liking, right? There's, like I said, no rules. So this is how I previously did that first version I showed you. And then I actually split this into two separate objects as well. I will explain. So I split this off, so it wasn't just one. It was two separate pieces, but it was modeled off of one piece, if that makes sense. So if I go here and just expand that selection, and then if I was to go here, separate selection, so it was like this. And then what I did is apply a subdivision modifier to that. There we go. So then now this is a lot smoother. And this has got its own subdivision modifier as well. So, but it's, like I said, But if I want to do a change to that handle, it's not as easy as, you know, doing it a curve. So, you know, and if I want to change the thickness or the scale, so if I hold Alt S, I can change the thickness of the handle on the curve. I can add more points. I can remove more points. So there's disadvantages and advantages of certain things. Like here, I'll have to, you know, go into the faces or the vertices or the edge loops and adjust stuff. So I'll have to do it differently. Um, but you still get the same, you can still get the same look doing it anyway. So if I want this to be tapered, I'm going to kind of have to scale this out, make sure it's still touching the cup. So yeah, so it's different. Anyway, let's go back to this. Like I said, I kind of gone off topic a little bit, but like if I want this to taper, I hold Alt S. I can taper this in. You know, I can taper it out. I mean, so by Alt S and scaling it up or scaling it down. Um, that was a bit extreme, but you get the idea. I'm just dragging the value like so. Right, look at it from the side here. I'm gonna smooth this out. There we go. Maybe this is a bit too big, but there's no, like I said, no wrong. Only thing you need to be aware of is you don't clip into the inside too much if you want to show the inside. So you may have to just pull that out a tiny bit. There we go. Once you're happy with that, you can always, I would say, keep a copy of this just in case you want to go back and edit it, or don't. Actually, just keep it as it is. It's fine. Um, okay. So to rebuild the, let's fill in the cup. I'll show you how I did that. So add a mesh. We're going to circle, and this we're just going to hit tab, hit A to make sure everything's selected, and hit F to fill that in. Then we're going to bring this down, and that is our drink on the top of the surface. You know, so you can choose to have a cup with a drink, or you can say, okay, I don't want this one's an empty cup. You know, um, we'll do this later, but I'm just showing you that, you know, you can choose to fill it. You can have it half drunk, someone's drunken half of the cup, full cup, overflowing cup, you know, it's up to you. Delete this. There we go. So it's up to you where you want to place this. In terms of texturing, we'll do this in a second. Let's model the spoon. So the spoon itself, we're just going to go add, mesh, and we're going to use a UV sphere. Let's look at it from the side here. I'm just going to move this over here so we can see it, so it's not in the way of the cup. I'm going to go into tab, so edit mode. I'm going to select the faces, and I'm going to delete all of these faces. Boom. And that should leave us with this kind of spoon shape, right? At the bottom of the sphere. Now it doesn't look too much like a spoon, so if we look at it from above, what we can do is just scale this in, and then we're going to look at it again from the bottom, the side, and we're going to scale this in a tiny bit. You can choose how deep of a spoon you want. Maybe you want a deep spoon, a small spoon. There we go. We got a spoon. So with all of this, select these edges. You can take X-ray off if you want. Look at the top view. We want to take these two edges here, and I want to extrude along. So E, and I'm going to drag this up. E, and drag it up again. E, and up. Okay. And I'm going to just scale this out so it tapers out. So I'm going to select this loop, kind of tapers out. Then I want it to taper back in. At any point, if you want to add additional detail, if say you want to add another edge loop, you can go to the loop cut tool here. You can say, okay, I'm going to add a loop, extra loop here, and I want the spoon to kind of bend, go up, and then select these loops here. Yep, select these two loops, and then, you know, bring this edge loop up, and again, this up. If I go into the side view, we can kind of get a better idea. So it kind of, you know, you can shape it to your need, right? And we can adjust this as we go along. But we're going to add some modifiers to this, generate. And what we want to do is solidify this, right? We need some thickness. And then we're going to add a subdivision surface. Boop. Right click this, shade smooth. We have a spoon. Very simple geometry. If we look at it, it's very simple topology and geometry. You know, it's not, there's nothing too complex. If we turn the subdivision off, let's go back here, turn the subdivision off. You can see it's not complicated at all. We can turn this off as well. Very simple geometry, and you can shape this easily to your liking. All right, I'm gonna turn these back on. And then if you want to continue shaping this on the subdivision here, turn and cage, it's easier to see. And then what you can do is you can go here. Okay, I want to move these vertices, and so maybe select X-ray so you can select those back faces as well. So you're not select, because if X-ray is off and I just kind of select this, you're gonna get an issue like this. That's why I always use X-ray. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but yeah, I'm gonna just do it like this and kind of shape this. Like I said, no rules to how you shape your spoon or your teaspoon or whatever you want to do. Kind of scale this down a little. There we go. I'm going to hit object center to center of mass there. You can also change that pivot point wherever you want. Easiest way for me to change that pivot point, if I go here, options, origin, and I can set that pivot point. So if I want it to be the tip of the spoon here, for example, and then uncheck origin, now I can rotate this from here and angle it exactly where I want, or place it in the drink. Boom. And I can just rotate this. Like so. So you can see how easy it is to create the geometry. It's not, like I said, it's nothing complicated. Materials themselves, again, really simple. There's just images. They're not even proper PBRs that I used. Just took a texture and then kind of just stretched it and repeated it, duplicated it, made a texture out of it. I'll provide those if you want to use them. You can use your own ones. I'll just duplicate the spoon right now. We have a spoon on the side. Let's apply some materials. So we want to apply material to this. I'm going to split this into shader. So I'm going to do a vertical split. So over here you can see this thing. I'm going to shader, editor, and I'm going to apply a new material. So go here, material, and I go new. And I want to, from the base color, you don't have to use these. If you don't want to use the textures and you just want to use a color, by the way, you know, if you just say, okay, I want actual just a red mug and it's glossy, boom, you're done. And apply the same material to this. And, you know, you may want to do something like that. It's entirely up to you. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm going to just open the texture. I'm going to go to that YouTube folder I made, and I'm going to go to mug texture. There, boom. And now you got some stretching. Of course, this is not too bad. The handle's not too bad on the curve, which is nicely unwrapped. The inside we can see some stretching here, and then stretching here. So we can kind of try to fix this. We can maybe, because I'm using, if you go preferences, I'm using Maya free UV mapping. We can see if this will fix it. So we can go here. I'm just going to move this a little bit bigger. I'm going to select those faces A, and I'm going to say UV. Let's see if it can conform and see if that fixes it. So I just went UV unwrap conformal and see how that looks. Almost, but not Minimal stretch. Let's see. We'll have let's go into UV mapping, see what we're getting. So that's actually not too bad. It's not actually too bad, but you can see this is stretched, right? And we don't want that. So what we're going to do is select. I'm going to select these 4 faces here. So you can see that on the UV maps here. I'm going to Control Plus and just grow that selection. Now I don't want the sides, right? Just like that. I'm going to select this. Actually, let's just select it all. Let's just do like this. Okay, let's say we've got this. I'm going to look at it from beneath. I'm going to say UV project from view. Now we've got a nice circle. Actually, I could expand it more because I've missed 2. Okay, let's do those 2. UV project from view. And now if we turn that, the material there, now you can see it's not stretched, and of course you can move this around and you can kind of texture this how you want and choose which part of the texture. That's just one way of texturing, right? You could use the texture painting tools. You can go do it in Substance Painter. I prefer Substance Painter for texturing, but you can see now it's not stretched there. And then here, the body, if I was to go here, I can see us. I believe this is this rim here, this edge loop here, because these are, you can see, and they're quite tight. So if I select these faces and scale these UVs out, and I'll do it again here. I'm trying to so they don't stretch because they're so squashed. On a Let's see if there's actually if we can gridify this. So if I go here in the Maya tools, see if we can gridify this. There we go. And see how that looks. That might help. And let's scale this out. So we're going. So you can see this is like the inside. That's the lip, if that makes sense. This is the lip, and then this is this is the outside. This is the lip, and then this is the insides. And the only way you know that is if the easiest way to do it. If I select these faces here, you can see the outside selected. Let's go in here, X-ray, so you can see what I'm selecting. Like you can see that's the outside, and then if I select these faces, these are the inside of the cup. But you can see now we have a lot less stretching. It's kind of, you can see the seam, of course. That's just because we're on the edge of this texture, right? Let me undo what I just did. Undo. Make sure, let's move, oh. I want to move this, let me move this out of the way. So I don't want these to clash, so I'm going to just move this up here for now. Okay. I'm going to turn the gizmos off so you can see what's going on here as I do it. As I move these UVs around, you can kind of see what's going on. So we can rotate this probably this way. Something like this. And if I scale this up and down, around, and let's scale this in. I want to get this. See, like, see that's the seam right there, and you can see that's the seam line right there. So I can kind of scale and play around with this to get the look I want. I think that looks much better. Now, of course, I moved this out, and now this doesn't look like it's blending nicely. So I'm going to just kind of shift this around, find a nice part of the texture that kind of works. And there we go. Now we've kind of UV mapped our thing. Of course, you can do the handle too. You'd have to convert this to a mesh, of course. And you're locking that in. So if I go to layer tab, if you do want to do changes later to it, and you know, maybe you want to keep a duplicate, I don't know, Shift D, so you have a duplicate of that, and you can just kind of turn that off in the render and the viewport, but then now convert this one to mesh. So if at any point, say you say, oh, actually, I need to change this. I know you'd have to do the UV mapping again, but at least you have the model that you can, you know, tweak the curve or the Bezier. It's just there if you need it. But then you got this. Now you have to kind of, you know, unwrap. So you can you can mark seams as well. I didn't really show you that, but if you want to like set the seams on this, you can. Let's go to X-ray. So you can say, okay, I'm gonna mark a seam here, mark a seam here, and we're gonna go straight down here. For example, the inside, because you're not gonna see it, I can go UV and say mark seam. If I go here to UV editing, that you can see there's the seams there. You know, you can do that. It's already unwrapped because it's pretty well unwrapped for us anyway, which is good. But if I want to kind of scale this in tighter, or if I want it bigger, you know, you can play around with it. There's no rules to what you're doing, right? Maybe you want to rotate this, you know, and you want to scale this in. Like I said, you're not tied into that, but yeah, you can, and then you can play around with the UV mapping on that. Other way is if I undo. Let's go back to layout. Let's undo this. So now this is the Bezier curve. The other way I should have showed you how you could do this. Change the mapping on this. You can go here, mapping. Oh, before I do that, because I'm going to mess up this one because they're the same material. I'm going to copy this, copy material. I'll remove that material. New material, and then I paste material, so that's textures on there, but it's material 2 and that's material 1, but that's the same texture. But now I can change the mapping, so I can add mapping, and then I can go something like texture coordinates, and then of course right now it's on windowed, changes to something like generated or object, and you know, I can rotate this around. So there's different ways of changing mapping, ways of mapping a texture, UV mapping it. So if maybe object would be better. But yeah, it's whatever works for you, right? It's like I said, you're not locked into one way or one workflow or thing. So I'll just say experiment, see what works, what doesn't work. Or you can go back into the UVs and then zero these out. Boom. Set this to 1. And then I can kind of shift this around. There we go. We can see the seam here. Let's see. So maybe we can move this. Seam underneath. So it's a little bit less visible, but yeah, like I said, and you can see there's a seam here, but it's not going to be perfect. I mean, if you want it perfect, I would recommend using like the paint tools or something like what's it called, Substance, and you know, but you can get it perfect. But yeah. Anyway, that'll do. That'll do. Anyway, let's put a material on our spoon and put a material on this. So the spoon, pretty simple. If you click on the spoon itself, new material, we're going to ramp up the metallic, and you can see it's metallic, and then bring that roughness down, boom, and you can just got a little spoon. So I'll apply the same material 3 there. Drink itself is just the texture, so new material. If I go here, base color, image texture, and then open in that folder, in the folder that I'll give you on the Google Drive. You can download this coffee drink texture, and what we want to do is move the UV mapping. So if we go to UV editing here, we scale our UV. So we can't see our UV right now. So we're gonna go tab. Right, we're gonna make sure we're on the select right object. Tab A. Go look at it from above. So we go to the viewport here. Let me turn my gizmos on so you can see what I'm actually doing. If I look at it from above and then say UV project from view. There you go. And there's a circle. All I'm doing is scale this up and choose which drink I want. So if I want this drink, then I kind of just choose this one. And then of course, if you want to change the rotation, you can rotate the texture here, about the UVs here, or you can actually just rotate this. It doesn't, there's no, you can rotate the object. It's up to you. And we have a nice drink, right? We've made the Artisan mug. We've got a nice fancy drink. We've got a spoon in there. And then if I was to duplicate this, so if I was to select all these 3 items, for example, Shift D, and then you can kind of rotate and place your scene how you want, or choose your composition or angle of the mug, and then say I want a different drink on there. Just I'm gonna copy and paste this material because I don't want to. Actually, I don't need to copy and paste. I just want to move the UV, so I'm just gonna select that UV on this one. Actually, we want to change the UV, but we want to also do the mirror thing. But anyway, let's move this UV over like so. So now we have this one, but we want this one to be glossy, right? Because we don't want this one to be glossy. We want this one to be glossy. So I'm going to code the material. I'm going to say copy material, remove that, new material, paste. Oh, sorry, new material and paste this in. Paste. There we go. So now I can go here, play around with the roughness and say, okay, I'm going to bring the roughness down. And you can see it's nice and reflective. If I go here, I don't want this to be as reflective, completely different. Right now we're in Eevee. You can also turn on the ray tracing if you want. Get a different look. You can get a better idea of those reflections. And Eevee. What I showed you earlier was cycles. Again, it doesn't matter what renderer you choose. You're just gonna have to consider that the materials and that you're using and how they react and behave differently for which renderer you're using. But yeah, that's a different thing. Anyway, I'm gonna go here to layout. I'm gonna right click and see, trying to the right. Boom. Let's add in the wooden slab. So all I did was just grab a mesh cube, scale this down. There's some big. Okay, from above. And I'll move this down. There we go. New material, base color. I just applied the image texture. That opened. That I have a wood slab here. But of course, you can get much better PBR textures, like I said. But that's just, I mean, sometimes you can just get away with doing something so just straightforward and simple. I'm gonna go here, add a bevel. Boom. I'm just gonna Control A, apply that scale, increase that, make it nice and round. And on here, I added additional mesh. I kind of pushed this up like this, so it's kind of squashed. And then I changed the material, so I added a second material. So I assigned a new material to this, which was just a different color. Just so if you can play around with that. There's no, you maybe want to go orange, green, blue, whatever it was. I think I went with like an orangey color. And show you that smooth. If you want to add more, because you can see it's quite sharp, you can go in here, add some more to the actual roundness of that, and then play around with the bevel. There we go. And then of course you can make this more thin. There we go. Now you got a little slab of wood. You can kind of put it on. If the final thing I did is just the backdrop, which is the mesh. You've seen me do this in previous videos. If you haven't, I'll just get a plane, kind of just drop this down, and I kind of select these edge loops, these two edges here, and I press E to extrude up, and then I'll right click, bevel edges, I'll just increase that a little bit, and right, there we go, right click, shade auto smooth, and apply new material, and we can kind of set that color that we want. You can play around with this when we set. So what I'm going to do is actually right click, vertical split, add a camera on the options here. So I hit N, this pops out the little side menu here, view, camera to view, 0 on the numpad, boom. If you don't have a number pad, you can go here, and then you can go cameras, and then active camera, and it will jump to it. It's the same as hitting 0, right? If you don't have a numpad, I know some people don't have it if you're using a laptop, for example. Home key, that'll fit the screen. On the camera itself, but all the options that are here for the cameras, set active camera, 0, home, so you frame the camera. You can see there's the shortcuts. But if you don't have, like I said, if you don't have a numpad with the shortcuts, or you don't have a home key or something like that, you can find it here, view, cameras, and you can get these options here. View display port, I'm going to do passport out, so now we're just focused on this. Let's turn the gizmos off. I'm going to just push this away. Don't worry too much. I left this here so you can see what keys I'm pressing. So when I'm holding down the middle mouse button, you can see. If I hold shift, you can see too. Right, I'm going to pull this out, and we can frame our shot kind of how we want. So it was something like this. It wasn't perfect, and I can kind of move the objects around. Like I said, you're not tied into oh, make sure these are all selected. There we go. You're not locked into a specific way it should be composition, or you can play around with that yourself. I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna change the scene world. Oh, maybe something like this. I can rotate this, and boom. Now that's just Eevee, right? And of course, then you can add your lighting. I haven't changed the cycles yet, so if I go to cycles, oh, hit cycles, you get much nicer lighting. You can see some of that green coming in. If I just hit the denoise, you can see some of that reflections coming in from the, thing. So I want like a warm feel. So maybe I'll go for this. Maybe you want a nighttime coffee. I don't know. Whatever you're trying to set environment, you're trying to set. You can kind of or feeling or colors. But you can see already. Look how nice the spoon looks. You can see the roughness, how the reflection on that's working, where this is not as rough. If you want to add some noise into the material as well, I kind of didn't cover that. If you did have like a proper BBR, you'd have a bump, displacement map, normal maps, or whatever it is. But you can just take, if I go to shader editor, for example, on the mug, for example, you can go here in options, or is it options? Yeah, it's options, right? Settings, I'll change that displacement to displacement and bump, right? If we pay attention to the surface of this mug, for example, I'm going to pipe this texture as a bump. I'm going to go here, bump, And I'm going to fill this in color into the height. You can see, just me tweaking it, you can see we can add this in. The distance is not the right way I want to go. I'm going to bring this down. There we go. And then I'm going to bring that strength down. So I want it very subtle. I don't want it, I mean, these are like, you know, these fancy mugs. But there we go. You can see now we've got some kind of displacement and bump going on there. Just adds that extra detail. Of course, you can do the same on the wood. Like I said, you're not locked into this. But I mean, I do recommend. Oh, I chose the wrong one there. It's this material here, the wood slab, and you know I can repeat the same thing here. But if you do have proper PBR textures, there are libraries that you can download that are free, add-ons that you can do as well. You can get them for free, as well. So, but yeah, you can see now I can play around with that. And then play around with the distance, how much distance I want on that, and then I'll bring that strength down. Yeah, it may work, it may not work. It's finding what works and what doesn't, and maybe the roughness in there. I don't want this to be rough, and I don't want this to be as strong. But yeah, it's just play around, find what works, what doesn't work. Yeah. And then all I used additional add-ons. You, of course, like don't need to do that. These are paid add-ons I just bought myself. They're not promote. I'm not promoting them. I do like them. The Gobo lights on the Blender Market and the droplet generator. Those are cool tools. I got them quite cheap, so when they're on sale, definitely check them out. I think, you know, they are worth it. There you go. Completely different look and feel. And again, I can match this, change this wooden slab, and get a different kind of look and feel as well. Like I said, I haven't used any add-ons just yet. Like, I'm just keeping it simple for now, just so you can see. Again, if I add a light in here, maybe I'll grab a light. Let's grab an area light. You know, we can add some light coming from the side here. Maybe push this up. If I increase that exposure there, you know, you're not locked into. You can have a different color coming in from the side. You can do this whatever you want. But hopefully this was useful. Now I'm going to be just waffling on. At this point, you don't need to follow along. I'm just gonna, you know, just mess around and just light this scene up. Like I said, you don't need to do this. You know, but if you want something, you know, just play around with it. You can see I'm gonna drag this around. Now I've got a nice warm look there. Pick up these warm highlights. And then of course, like I said, if you wanted to use additional plugins, for example, if I select this spoon and I say I want droplets on here, and I just scale this up. So what it does, it adds this. This is just geometry nodes, but it's because someone's already created all the presets, so it kind of saves you, you know, that additional work. That's why there's some great add-ons. Set that density something like 100, and then scale this up. Oh, and then you just got that detail. Of course, you don't have to do that. 200. Where has it gone? There we go. Yeah. So now I've got some little drops there. Maybe I want to add some drops on there. You know, it doesn't make sense, but maybe actually it's built some hot water on the outside, or you just clean the glass and then made a nice fresh cup. But yeah, you can scale these up. And this has like you know, there's additional stuff like you can have like actual water, like drops running down, animated drops. This that you got long drops on. You can animate these. There's so many things. You know, it's quite a powerful little plug in there. Oh yeah, like I said. Oh, maybe without that long drop there is kind of flying off. It's a bit crazy there, but yeah. You can see the little drops there. Like I said, it's not necessary. Maybe you want them smaller, more subtle. And then if I was to go and get the gobo lights, so split, asset browser, and let's say some trees or something. Get some of these. Boom. I'm just going to move this up, add some exposure. Boom. You see, you add something to it without, you know, doing too much. I can increase that radius a little bit so it's not so much in focus. If I want to add some color to that light, there we go. And just changing that background, you see, just changing that backdrop, it changes the mood, the environment, you know. But yeah, find what works for you. Maybe I want to go for a lighter color, darker color. Really up to you. Whatever palette. Everyone has different, you know, preference, choice. Like I said, maybe I'll go for green, but more saturation. You know, I don't know. I don't know. Additionally, if you want to add some coffee beans, I'm just thinking now. Now at this point, I'm just, you know, I'm kind of pushing it. You could add some marshmallows, coffee beans. Set yourself a, you know, maybe set yourself some additional modeling tasks that you want to try. Let's see, how can I make a coffee bean? Or, you know, set yourself a challenge. Um, you're not locked into this. Don't forget to save your work. As you notice, I haven't saved it, but I've already created this previously, so I don't need to. But maybe I want to save this as another version. But like I said, you maybe say we want to create a coffee bean, and we say okay, let's go 12 by 12, and we just rotate this and scale it and stretch it. And we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to select this. We're going to select these. Oh, these edge loops. It's easier if I turn X-ray off. There we go. Push this in. I don't know. Maybe is that a coffee bean? I don't know. I want you to experiment and see what you can create. Like I said, it doesn't have to be like the same as what I'm making. You could probably make a better coffee bean than this. And then just go here. We'll make it nice brown. Then we're gonna shade smooth, and we're gonna try to shape this a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah, I hope this makes some kind of. I'm not just talking rubbish, or you know. Sometimes I do talk a lot of rubbish, but you know, maybe you add some physics inside. So maybe you make one coffee bean and you know create physics on there. There we go. That's a big coffee bean, but yeah. Um, materials. Yeah, it's a bit glossy. And we can place that down. Or let's just see what happens, right? We add a modifier. We're gonna say physics collision, not collision. Delete the collision. Can I delete the collision? I want collision. Let me undo. There we go. Physics, and then rigid body, active. You know, yeah, let's leave it like that. That's perfectly fine. Well, I did just duplicate. If I hit play, it will just go straight through the surface, right? Now, this is just bonus to extra stuff. Set this to collision, so this now won't collide. Boom. Oh, it did collide. Maybe because we did not apply. I don't know. No, that's a collision. So let's apply. Why is it going through? Oh, not entirely sure. 1 second. Oh, sorry, I had to go pee. Why is this collision not working? Is it just because there's not enough geometry in there? And what we could do is just cheat and just get a plane, right? Let's add a collision to this. Let's see if this works quickly. No, so if I was to subdivide, just subdivide this a few times. Let's hit replay. What? Does it need a thickness to this? What, is there something different that they've done? I did not know. Let me just extrude this. I don't know if it needs a thickness. I doubt it needs thickness, right? I said collision. Actually, I'm stupid. Don't set collision. I'm thinking collision thing. Don't set collision. Rigid body. Alright. And make that passive. Now it will work. I'm stupid. There we go. You got a bean. You got your one bean. Now what happens if you have loads of beans, you know? Now I'm sure there's a better way to, create these. But yeah. I'm gonna kind of try to select these. Boom, 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 boom. Might be crazy. This is not probably the best way of doing it, but yeah. I'm sure there's a better way. 100% there's a better way. But we got beans, right? Hit play. There we go. And if I go here, you can see how that looks. Now we've got some beans on our surface, you know. But yeah, I'll leave that to you. Experiment. I won't. I'm not. That's just me just adding extra stuff in. But like I said, I want to see you make marshmallows or something. I don't know, marshmallows, a croissant, whatever you want. I don't know, whatever you want to do. Add some additional lighting in there. Maybe you want to say, okay, I want to kind of put a light on those beans a little bit. So you can see here, adds a little bit to the light, maybe tiny bit. You can see them a little bit better. See, now the backdrop I don't like the backdrop anymore. Like I said, you see, every 2 seconds I'm like, I can change this or I can change that. Maybe I'll go for something like this for this one. But yeah. And then of course you can change cameras. Like I said, if you want isometric, orthographic view of this, boom. And of course, because this is square, this is square. It's just, it's just the distance. But yeah, and the position. But if I was to move this forward or something, and like, you know, you can see just how you set it up and what you prefer. And then play around with the camera settings. But enjoy your day. I hope this was useful and helpful. If not, apologies. But it's just one of those videos I tried. Um, I took something simple, like there's a lot of, you know, something simple and just made it overcomplicated. But yeah, like I said, this doesn't have to be, you don't have to set this up like this. I'll just duplicate that. So maybe I want this one. This kind of sits on the top. Like I said, I could sit here all day messing around and doing stuff. Maybe it's sitting on top, maybe it's flipped over, you know, we've seen the other side of the spoon. And it's just resting on the actual mug. As long as you get looking correct, it would work. You know, I hope that makes sense. And I hope this was some use. Anyway, enjoy your day, morning, evening, and night. Bye bye.